Spend any amount of time in southern China, and you will find a lot of communities that look something like this. Even here in the ultra-modern city of Shenzhen, you will come across neighborhoods of extremely densely packed, low-rise, walk-up, mixed-use communities. These communities are called urban villages, and they are very common here in Guangdong province. Guangdong's urban villages are unique, and they're easily identified by their washou lo, meaning handshake buildings. You can probably guess why they have that name, but just in case, it's because they say that you can open your window and shake the hand of your neighbor. That's how close the houses are. These handshake buildings in Shenzhen's urban villages have not just survived but thrived, while the new city has sprung up all around them. Much of the city that was built around and eventually enveloped the urban villages looks a lot like other Chinese cities. In many cases, once you leave the urban village, you don't have much of a sense of place in Shenzhen, China. Shenzhen, I would argue, is the Chinese equivalent of any place USA. It is both a new city and a city of immigrants, meaning that it sometimes lacks a kind of culture and history of its own. Much of Shenzhen looks like this: shared footpaths and bike lanes, on-street parking, street-level parking, even worse, parking on sidewalks, very few protected bike lanes. It is a typical Chinese city with a dense urban environment that is walkable, but not necessarily pedestrian friendly. It is not particularly accessible for people with disabilities or comfortable for anybody to move about within. These two examples of Shenzhen are how much of China and how many big cities especially used to be. Local neighborhoods that were swallowed up by rapid development, and rapid development that wasn't necessarily done by anyone who cares about livability, walkability, or other general urbanist best practices. The idea was rapid development, build at all costs as quickly as possible, without a ton of forethought about how it all works together. This is just a generalization. Don't take it to mean every city in China developed in this way. Leave your comments at the door. I'm just speaking in generalities here. But I think that it is quite clear that in a lot of cases, city design hasn't always taken on a methodical, holistic, person-first approach. Now, I'm no urban planner, I'll be the first to tell you that. If you've seen my other videos in this urbanist kind of category though, you will remember that I did study geography in university and that I personally feel really affected by my environment. I tend to notice details in the built environment especially that make me feel good, as well as those things that make me feel bad. For example, footpaths that are shared between bikes, scooters, and pedestrians make me feel bad. Footpaths for pedestrians, roads for cars, and separate protected bike lanes, well, that just makes me feel good. So with that long introduction out of the way, let's take a look at a brand new neighborhood in Shenzhen and see all the things that make it an example of great urban design and hopefully representative of future city development, whether here in China or elsewhere around the world. This is Prince Bay, a peninsula on the southern tip of Shekou in Nanshan District, Shenzhen. It is situated directly across from the Hong Kong New Territories and next to a massive shipyard and industrial area. For more information on the area, check out my video on the Shekou Ferry Terminal and Cruise Center, linked in the description. Much of the Prince Bay Neighborhood Development Project has been built on reclaimed land. This has given the developers a blank canvas to create a new city completely and quite literally from the ground up. This has allowed them to rethink how a city should be, from traffic patterns to public transit to walkability, accessibility, and more. We start our tour here on Yolun Dadao. This is currently the only access point by car to Prince Bay, as well as the only large avenue in the neighborhood with multiple lanes of vehicle traffic on each side. This road leads directly to the ferry terminal, ensuring easy vehicle access and reducing congestion to the ferry terminal, while every cross street is narrow and with a low speed limit. The crossroads with Yolun Dadao are currently primarily only access streets that will take you to underground parking or to hotel drop-off points, while the one main avenue is built for moving vehicles in and out of the neighborhood, and to and from the ferry terminal and cruise center. As we make our way down this road, it is immediately obvious how different this neighborhood is from both the urban villages and the typical Chinese neighborhood mentioned at the top of this video. First, we have very wide sidewalks. The width of the sidewalks on the two sides of the street is wider than the avenue for the cars, or at least very close to it. We have also got areas designated for bikes and for pedestrians. While the bike paths are not completely protected and separated from pedestrians, they are marked off and distinct from the road and the footpath. And there is something else you might notice if you're paying attention. Many of the pedestrian zones are slightly elevated. They're offset from the main road and from the bikes. If you want to sit outside and have a meal or a coffee, or just walk safely away from vehicle and bike traffic, much of the public area is like this, separated on different levels. This has created a zone that is designed for foot traffic and for human-first experiences that are safe and relaxing. There are bollards and planters and other design elements throughout the area that also make it impossible for cars to park on the footpaths at ground level. In fact, throughout most of the neighborhood, you will see very few access points or driveway entrances for cars to cross into pedestrian zones. Yolun Dadao is unique in that there are no driveways. No cars will ever cross paths with pedestrians except at intersections and crosswalks. The only real downside I see to these elevated and separated footpaths is that they are not super accessible for wheelchair users. You do see quite a few ramps like this, which are, let's be honest, not great. The whole entire Prince Bay neighborhood is well connected to public transit. Both bus stops and subway stops are easily accessible, and of course affordable. The current only subway stop is situated centrally, smack dab in the middle of the Prince Bay neighborhood, meaning that from every corner of this peninsula, you can easily reach the subway station with just a short walk. The ferry terminal is also an international border crossing, taking you to Hong Kong proper or to the Hong Kong International Airport, as well as Macau or mainland Chinese destinations like Zhuhai and others. In the future, it should be a lively international hub of activity, easily accessible from all over the greater Bay Area. If you are a pedestrian or a cyclist, you will also notice how flat it is. Even when crossing the road, you will find no steep curb cuts here that are only good for allowing one wheelchair or one bicycle at a time to enter or exit the crosswalk. Instead, you'll find that the footpaths offer a nearly imperceptible, steady, gradual slope that leads to a totally flat intersection and street crossing. This makes it safer for pedestrians and for cyclists, and much more efficient at moving people. The only thing separating the street from the sidewalk is the safety bollards, not a high curb. Even the pedestrian islands in the middle of the street are totally flat, but they are still kept divided from vehicle traffic thanks to bollards and planters. We also will notice that most of the walkable area is covered by overhangs. Shenzhen is a hot tropical city. It is prone to both intense overhead sun as well as torrential tropical downpours. Walking in the streets in Prince Bay, you are protected from the elements. Not only are there overhangs, but also pedestrian flyovers connecting many of the office and residential towers to each other. This completely eliminates the need for a pedestrian to move to ground level and to deal with vehicle traffic or the aforementioned weather. If you are moving through the neighborhood on your feet, thanks to these different design elements such as the pedestrian flyovers, the overhangs, the separate height footpaths at street level, you can easily do so very safely away from vehicles, out of difficult weather situations, and of course away from the crazy food delivery drivers on their e-bikes. Now let's talk about cars, the bane of urbanists everywhere. Prince Bay is still in development, which means the parking situation is currently not ideal. In the video that you're watching, it might not look so appealing, but in the future, cars will not be parking on street level. There is no on-street parking here. The vast majority of the development has parking underground. Ferry terminal to the new shopping malls to the residential towers. Cars can take you to Prince Bay, but once you arrive, they are meant to be squirreled away underground, and you will use your feet to explore the neighborhood. To that end, there are no gas stations here either. There are, however, 3 EV charging stations. Again, all underground. And speaking of EV charging stations, above ground there's also plenty of street level parking for e-bikes and scooters, and there are charging points for those. Now let's talk about the residential aspect of Prince Bay. What is it going to be like to live here? Typical Chinese cities consist of residential blocks or neighborhoods that are called xiaoqiu. They are basically a set of apartment complexes that are surrounded by a wall with limited access and protected by security guards at different gates along the main public streets. However, here in Prince Bay, you will find residential towers with access directly at street level. There is a doorman or a guard on the ground floor in the lobby, but the buildings are not separate and distinct residential complexes or xiaoqiu as we know them. This is highly uncommon from my experience in China, but it makes the residential tower more of an integrated part of the community, not offset and walled off from the city streets. I would argue that this has both benefits and drawbacks. I've personally always liked Chinese xiaoqiu because of the common areas for residents to gather, the green spaces they provide, and the way that they make your home feel a little bit quieter and more of a distinct space apart from the city. Kind of a peaceful respite away from the hustle and bustle. On the other hand, some xiaoqiu can essentially create a black hole in the city, wiping out entire city blocks, isolating homes and people from the community at large. Once Prince Bay is fully built and residents are filled in with people, hopefully they will be well-integrated parts of the community, with people filling the public spaces between the buildings with song and dance and communal activities, just like they do in public spaces in their xiaoqiu or in their neighborhood parks. There are already many small public squares with tons of green space hidden away in the back streets of Prince Bay. These are already well-suited for the task of operating as a public square for the local residents. Another thing that you will notice, whether on the main street or in the back alleys, is a distinct lack of hostile architecture. Benches are plentiful and flat, people are welcome to post up here for long periods of time, and there are no anti-homeless spikes or angled benches keeping people away and stopping people from resting. With that being said, there is one thing that I found that I do hope changes, and that's the lack of affordable housing in the area. Nanshan District and Shekou in particular are already some of the most expensive neighborhoods in Shenzhen. When searching for information for this video, I was looking up housing costs, and I wanted to find out if there were any decent housing options for your average Joe. Fortunately, all I could find were luxury apartments for rent or sale that were well beyond what an average worker can earn in this city. I was unable to find any information about affordable housing being built in Prince Bay, public housing, that sort of thing, but my Chinese search skills are definitely lacking, so it doesn't mean that there isn't or there won't be, but I really hope that this is not just a neighborhood built for rich people. There's a lot more happening here actually. Maybe in a year or two I can come back and actually give you a guided tour of this place when it is more or less completed, when people are utilizing the space as intended, or maybe even in unintended ways. There are shopping malls going in, entertainment facilities, but in my opinion, the last thing Shenzhen needs is yet another shopping mall. The cruise terminal here also seems to be severely underutilized. Apparently nobody really wants to cruise to or from China in the current environment. I'm excited to see how Chinese cities will continue to develop in new and future forward ways. I feel like in a lot of ways, it kind of offers the best of both worlds when it comes to allowing access to cars but not being designed for cars. It does feel like a very people-first development designed around walkability, accessibility, and it's well integrated into the local community through multiple public transit options that are convenient and affordable. My feeling while watching this neighborhood spring up over the past few years is that it feels overwhelmingly welcoming. Every street, every alley, every square, it feels like a place for people to come and enjoy and sit and just relax and chill out. Nothing feels closed off, nothing feels antagonistic towards people, and at the same time, it still remains accessible by everybody, again, including vehicles, private vehicles. This neighborhood, to me, it feels like a big leap forward from the typical modern Chinese city, while still retaining a lot of what you expect from a Chinese city. I'm sure that there are plenty of other things that I've missed, so feel free to point them out in the comments. Or if there's something else that you see that you don't like, put that in the comments as well. And if you've made it this far, make sure to give support through commenting, liking, subscribing, even giving your hard-earned money if that's the sort of thing you're into, Findom. And if you do want more content like this, I don't usually make it. Sometimes I do. But, again, let me know in the comments that you like it, and I will focus more on the stuff that you guys want to see. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.